were the greatest presentations I saw and what were the worst. And it's very easy to pick out the worst. I went to a conference of educators, and the head of that conference, for her keynote address, read to us for 45 minutes. And I thought, geez, these are educators. We can read. If you're just going to read to us, give us the content and we'll read it ourselves. And the second one was, I had somebody get up in front of us. The first thing she did was she couldn't figure out the technology and quickly admitted, I don't know a thing about technology. I'm like, well, why are you using technology if you don't know a thing about it? And then the presentation that she gave to us was a presentation that was tailored for a totally different audience. And so when she started going through it, we kind of said, well, that's kind of boring. And then the third thing she did was she looked down the whole time. So she's talking to us like this. She was supposed to be communicating with us, but I never saw her eyes in that 30-minute time frame of near death. I almost took a pen out and jabbed it in my eye so I would have to go to the hospital. And that might have been a little extreme, but I really hate bad presentations. So what I'm here today to do is to help you end PowerPoint poisoning and maybe become a little bit better presenter in the process. So how do you end PowerPoint poisoning? The first thing that you've got to do is consolidate your slides. The worst thing that I could possibly hear in any presentation is when they start talking and they're on slide 25 and they say, but don't worry, I'm going to cover that in slide 65. That's when I pull out my cell phone and pretend that I got a very important call and I run for the exit. So you've got to limit your slides if you're going to do this. The other thing is we're going to talk about today a little of the key presentation shifts. How are you going to shift the way that you've always presented in order to be more effective as a presenter for the audiences that you're going to meet as an educator, leader, cadre member? The third thing I want you to do is really be able to demonstrate mastery in presenting. We have to be master presenters. If your presentation skills detract from the message doesn't get through. It doesn't get communicated. So you have to be that master presenter in order to really impact the audiences that we want to impact. You have to have evidence. Evidence-centered presenting means that you're going to really talk about subjects that matter to people. It's not just talking about other things. That second presenter I talked about, she had a shiny object syndrome. Shiny objects would suddenly appear in her brain and she would start talking about them even though they didn't have anything to do with what she was talking about. And then another shiny object would pop up and she'd go, oh, this is something I'm really fascinated with, I'm going to start talking about it, even though it really wasn't what her audience wanted. So shiny object syndrome is something you have to eliminate by really keeping to your evidence and what you want to present. And then finally, how do you present Common Core? That is the key to what we're trying to do here. So we have a two problem in educator presenters. They're too much in what they're trying to present. They're too slick, meaning there's lots of spinning things going around. How many people use Prezi? Come on, admit it. How many people? You may be good at Prezi, but 80% of the people, and this is a known fact, I'm not just making this up, don't know how to properly use Prezi, and it ends up being this spinning thing with people's eyes just going around and around, and we're diving so deep into the dot on the eye, we don't know where this is ever going to end. We're going to come out on the other side of the world. Prezi is great if used in moderation. Illustrations are great if used in moderation. But we get enamored with something and we're like, this is great. I'm going to just spin the heck out of this. So don't be too slick. You can't be too boring. Now, sometimes the content doesn't lend itself to great engaging presentations. So you've got to understand that, and you've got to understand your audience and figure out how to limit that boringness to a level where we can tolerate it and get through this heavy content. There's a lot of stuff. Just in the last 3 weeks, the amount of content that we've got to try to get through to educator, leader, cadre members has grown exponentially. But we've got to make sure that we're not too boring. You can't be too ambiguous. We've been very clear. Why are you here? When you're presenting, that's one of the biggest things. People have to know, I have a connection to you, and I'm here for a reason. Time is the most valuable thing educators have. There isn't enough of it, making it a very valuable commodity. If an educator gives you their time, you have to have a very specific reason on why you're there, and you've got to make sure that you clearly communicate that. And you can't be too long. I'm already being cut short. I'm good at being cut short. I'm a short guy. It helps. But I won't ever be too long. So the key shifts. The first thing you have to do is have fun. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Every organization I've ever been a part of, it's the first thing I tell people. If you're not having fun, guess what? Your audience is not having fun. If you're miserable up there, you're making sure that everybody in that audience is miserable with you. Doug and his team have fun. They are so passionate about this that you can see it, and it echoes and reverberates in their message. It has to be your message too. This is fun. If it's not fun, we're doing it wrong. The second thing you've got to do is model. I started out with two of the worst presenters that I'd seen this year. Every one of you sees presentations throughout your year, throughout your day. What I want you to do, and this was given to me when I was first in the Navy, they said, when they taught us leadership, there was actually a Leadership 101 course in the Naval Academy, so they teach it. The guy said, the only thing you have to know is remember every single great leader you see and do what they do, and remember every poor leader and how they made you feel and never do that. It's the same thing with presenters. Nobody's born with innate presentation skills, but you see a disaster of somebody presenting and you go, okay, I'm never doing that, that, and that because that's just mean. I don't want people to sit through that. And then remember the great presenters that you saw and model what they do, and you're going to slowly perfect your style. But presenting is a very individual style. You don't want to model somebody who's great at humor if you're not somebody that's very humorous. How many people have been in the audience for the awkward joke? It's horrific. If you don't have a good sense of humor and you don't deliver a great joke, don't do one. It must be in the superintendent's handbook, apologies to superintendents, that somebody give them a joke that's not really their strength, and they deliver it, and everybody gives the either polite laughter or squirms or, ugh. The other thing you've got to do is prepare. Presentation is all about being prepared. Preparing means doing a whole lot of pre-work and then also practicing your presentation. The worst thing you can do is nervousness comes from not being prepared. If you're prepared, you're not going to be nervous. You all know this from what you do in your classrooms. Make sure you're doing it when you're presenting. Relieving the pain. Common Core right now is causing serious angst in all of your states, all of your districts, all of your schools. You're there to relieve the pain. As a presenter, if you're relieving the pain and you're focused on that, that's going to help bond with your audience, and they are really going to appreciate what you've done for them. Relieving the pain is why we're here. The educator leader cadre is about bringing information because information relieves the pain. Now, you don't want to be the kind of pain reliever that somebody has to keep taking over and over again. You're the kind of pain reliever that fixes the pain for good by giving them the tools and the knowledge they need to relieve their own pain. That's what this is about. We're not giving them fish, we're teaching them how to fish. And then finally, you've got to tailor your presentation to the audience. That's absolutely the most critical thing. I pointed out that first presentation that I thought was, or second presentation, it was because that presentation was somebody just took the slides from something else they had done and just said, well, it kind of has the message I want. I'll just go ahead and bring that. That's not what you want to do. As Doug pointed out, he wants you to pull the slides that have meaning for you. That's what you want to do when you create your presentation or create your communication for your different audiences. So what is mastery? How do you master presenting? You've got to ask certain questions before you even start. Why are you there? That's the most critical. Why are you in front of this particular audience at this particular time? That's how you tailor your presentation. If you can't answer that or you don't know why, then you've got to go back and start asking people. You've got to ask your potential audience, why are you here? What do you want to hear? I know you're valuable, your time is valuable, So I want to answer that question before I come in and talk to you. You cannot just go in cold. What do you want to accomplish? The educator leader cadre is about action. So when you start thinking about what do you want this audience to do, what are their takeaways? What are they going to do because they came and heard you speak? This is not about another download of information. We don't want to be downloaders of information. We want to give them information, give them tools so that they can take it off and do something for themselves that is going to increase college and career readiness in their schools. That's what the educator leader cadre is about, action. The who. Who is your audience? Are you doing this before a bunch of students? Are you doing this for parents? Or are you doing this for your department in your school? All of that will create what you need to do. What is their knowledge level of Common Core? What is their knowledge level of PARC? That's going to dictate what you do in your presentation, how you present, and what content you bring. The where. That is the huge, huge factor. You know, Maslow's hierarchy means if you're cold or you're hot or you're hungry because it's just about lunchtime or you haven't had a bathroom break, all of those things affect whether or not I'm going to clearly communicate with you the message I want you to take away. So you've got to understand the where. Are you on a stage? There's no podium here. Everybody notice that? We hate podiums. Podiums separate me from you and cause me to stand stationary here. If you notice, I move. You all understand from your classroom days proximity. I'm trying to do that with you to make sure that I make that connection. The where dictates how you're going to present and how effective you can be. You've got to try to make sure that that where meets the needs of both you and the audience so that you can get the most out of that time spent with those people. And it may just be you're sitting down face to face with somebody. That's a very casual conversation. It may be 5 educators. If you're sitting with 5 educators, you really don't want a PowerPoint. It makes it much, much too formal. So you've really got to figure out what you're going to do. And we've all been in the PowerPoint for 5 people. It's really annoying. Style and substance. You've got your right side of your brain and your left side of your brain, right? The right side of the brain demands great content. And there's a balance here. If you've got amazing content like we had this morning, you can kind of diminish on the style side because you've got such great information that people are dying to hear. You know, at the last meeting, they didn't have the items. So it made for a little bit less substantive meeting because we didn't have those and people were longing for those. Everybody wanted those items. Style and substance, you've got to have both. You've got to think about both when you're creating your presentation. You're supposed to dress one level up above your audience. You know, you should look nice. You should be prepared. You should have the tools that you need in order to make sure that this is a good presentation. Your materials should look good, and there should be some sort of graphics on there to hold their attention. At the same time, the content is critical. If you're just delivering fluff, nobody cares. People want substance. We're getting, you know, there's 2 years away, but people are very much focused on what do I need to know and what do I need to do. That's your role. They're going to be looking for it. You've got to deliver that, but you've got to deliver it effectively. And then the rules. There's a simple 24 rules on that page on how to be a great presenter. This is like everything that I ever have heard, pulled from, talked to people about what the rules for great presenting are. There's no way you're going to remember 24 things. What you want to do is think about your audience, look at these rules, and make sure that for that particular audience, I'm doing the things that they're going to want to know and hear from this list. There are some PowerPoint rules. No more than 3 to 4 points per slide. That's difficult to do. But this is not about the slides, it's about what you can deliver. Once again, if you can read it, why do I need the presenter? You need the presenter to lead you through this journey and give them the information that's not on the slides. The best thing to have is a handout. If you have a handout that actually has areas for people to write in, they're more than likely to use that handout and refer back to it because they've invested time in that handout as well. So if you leave space for people to take notes, they're going to take notes and they're going to refer back to those notes and be able to further implement the things you want them to implement. 10-20-30 rule. No more than 10 slides lasting 20 minutes on a 30-point font. That's difficult to do. But you want to leave time for Q&A. Now, if you have a ton of content like we had this morning, that's difficult to do. But you really want to get that investment in that exchange of information through Q&A. That allows you to do that. 30-point font means that somebody's going to be able to read that from the back of the room. The PowerPoint mistakes are too much info, not enough visuals, crappy quality, and I'm reading to you again, and now you're getting bored. Just thought I'd throw that in. Nothing in your pockets. Because I have too much technology right now, it doesn't matter. But if I didn't have all this technology and I have my keys in my pocket or my phone or change, it draws your hand there. It's another shiny object to distract you and distract your audience from the message you're trying to deliver. Slow down. That used to be my biggest fault. I would get up here and just start talking really fast, and I can talk really fast if I want to. I can do out many things, and I'll just get through all the information right now because I'm a little bit nervous. But nobody gets my message if I'm talking that fast. Conversely, if I'm slow and I pause for effect too much, I'm going to lose you as well. So you've got to balance that. Pausing for effect is great. It does give that emphasis that you want, that people need to hear, that this is very important, that's why I'm pausing. Or emphasizing words. So you've got to do both, but you can't go too slow. That's also very painful. Smooth transitions. Another difficult thing to do, but when you're going from slide to slide to slide and you're trying to compact everything into that message, it can be very difficult for people to come up if you're doing some very dramatic shifts that don't actually form a nice transition from one topic to the next. Sincerity will always win the day. I'm missing one there. Sincerity and honesty are key. That is, your audience can see right through it. If you don't believe in what you're doing, they won't believe in what you're doing. And the last thing I want to stress is self-deprecating is self-defeating. I used to run Kaplan test prep, and we had new instructors, and we tried to get them, we always told them, never go in front of an audience and say, I'm new at this. Because people at Kaplan just spent $1,000 for that course, and you're telling me that this is your first time? Give me my $1,000 back, you're an idiot. You need to be the one in command. You are the one in charge. When you are self-deprecating by saying, I don't know if I should be doing this, or this is my first time presenting on Common Core, you immediately undermine the ability to communicate with those people. You are in charge. You were selected by over 1.5 million other teachers to be here because your state knew that you could carry that responsibility. You need to do so, and you need to do so with confidence when you go out there and communicate this message. That's absolutely critical. Now, you can be self-deprecating if you mess up. In the last session, I had Taylor spelled wrong. I admitted it, sort of, and then we moved on. Because we have Taylor here. I said, no, Taylor checks all of my stuff. And everybody goes, oh, okay. I'm like, no, I'm lying to you. I messed up. So you can admit messing up, but don't undermine your ability to be in front of that audience. You are there by virtue of the expertise that you are gaining here and the further work that you're going to do in understanding Common Core and getting really deep into what it means to be college and career ready. So that's the rules. Use them as you will. Try to do different ones at different times. Try to use them to benefit you as you go along this journey to try to become a much better presenter. Evidence-centered presenting means that you're telling a story. Getting up there and just delivering a series of slides on Common Core really don't help get people engaged in what you're doing. Starting with a story, like I did here today, helps people understand why they're here. It brings a real sense of what we're doing. Talking about the way to present in the context of other presentations you've sat through, you also started thinking, okay, I've been to bad presentations. I know what he's talking about. Starting with a story on why Common Core or how Common Core has affected your individual classroom brings it to life for other educators. If you've done something different on close reading, if you've done something different in math, and you can weave that story right at the beginning, That hooks your audience into why this work is so important and why they should take the time to listen to you. You've done it. You're doing it out there right now. By starting with that story, you're demonstrating to them that you are. Then you introduce yourself. If you start with, hey, I'm Dave Saba, I'm the CEO of Laying the Foundation, it's not as impactful as starting with that story and getting them hooked into and emotionally attached to what you're doing. So the first thing is the story, the hook. The second thing is introducing them and then thanking them for their time. Once again, we talked about most valuable thing educators have is time. They're giving it to you. Be polite and thank them for it. Then you go through the whole story of what Common Core means or what PARC means. Depending on your audience, this story will take different shapes. It's not just a series of random slides thrown together that we just think, okay, this is all the information I've got to get across. You need to tell the story. And if you're telling a story, it makes it much easier to remember what you're going to say. Because if you don't have a story, you're just doing random slides, it becomes very choppy. The story helps you smooth the transition. It's an easy transition from talking about what Common Core is, to what the frameworks are, to what the assessments are. Those transitions become very easy because you're weaving together the story of what educators need to know about Common Core. Telling a story makes it easier to remember your script or what you want to say. So use the story as a way to get your message across. In the final two parts of your presentation, you're going to ask for help. We're asking for your help. To get the word out about Common Core, to get the word out about PARC, you're going to ask other educators for their help. Assuming they're going to help is a little bit disingenuous. We really want to ask them for their help. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to ask them for help, and then you're going to ask for specific actions. We're action-oriented. The ELC is all about taking actions and getting things done. So your final piece will be to ask for their help, get them to take some action, and then thank them again for their time, and thank them in advance for helping us implement Common Core and PARC assessments. Common Core presenting, just to recap. Prepare. Know the who, the where, and the what that you're presenting. Make sure it's relevant. Make sure you know the room you're going to be in. Make sure you know your audience. And then practice, practice, practice without sounding like a robot. If you practice too much, it comes off way too stilted. It comes off either too smooth or too fast. So you need to practice without being totally a robot. Practice out loud. If you had the room next to me, you heard me this morning give this exact same speech a couple times. Because you've got to practice. If you don't practice out loud, you don't know what you're really going to stumble over. When you do it in your head, you don't stumble over a certain word like you would when you're doing it here live. So you've got to actually say it out loud, especially if it's a critical audience like this audience. I want to make sure that I'm not stumbling over my words. I want to make sure that my transitions sound and go smooth. So it's absolutely critical that you practice out loud. When you present, you're going to be telling that story. Tell the story of why we're here. Tell the story of what's going to be happening in Common Core. Tell them what's going to be happening with assessments and get them ready for August 2015. And finally, actions are a must. That's why you're here. You're not here to talk. We're not here to engage in discourse as much as we are unless that actually happens to create actions that help us get things done. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here when everything's going on at your school back home. And thank you for your efforts, and thank you for being part of the ELC.